Why even the most intelligent extraterrestrials decline to scan human warships? Humans are walking paradoxes encased in a fleshy sack of terrible ideas, Commander Vrah declared to his crew, his auxiliary respiratory organs quivering with what the Zixans considered amusement. And that, junior officers, is precisely why they are so perilous. The assembled crew of the Galactic Confederation scout vessel, Prudent Curiosity, regarded their commander with expressions of bewilderment etched across their multifaceted faces. Most were fresh from the academy, their exposure to humans limited to mandatory xenobiology and threat assessment classes. Lieutenant Plex Bohr, a tentacle raised hesitantly, inquired, "Commander, I understand they're designated a Class 7 threat species, but surely their rudimentary warp technology renders them manageable." The briefing indicated they'd barely colonized their own solar system. Vrah emitted a gurgling sound, which the ship's translator interpreted as a snort. Manageable? How delightfully naive. They've only been in space for 2 centuries, yet they've instigated 17 interstellar incidents. 3 species have lodged formal extinction risk complaints with the Confederation Council. The holoprojector at the center of the briefing room activated, displaying a standard Confederation threat assessment chart. 5 distinct species were highlighted in crimson, with humans positioned alarmingly close to the apex. Observe these statistics, Vrah continued, gesturing emphatically with his upper appendages. The Krellin, silicon-based warriors evolved from actual living crystals, even they filed a formal grievance following the trade negotiation fiasco. Officer Lumi Kentel, the ship's sensor specialist, twitched her antennae nervously. "Is it true, Commander, what they say about human warships?" Silence descended upon the room. Every cadet and junior officer had heard the rumors, some dismissing them as mere spacer tales, the kind of yarn spun in station bars after excessive consumption of fermented plant extracts. "It is," Vrah affirmed gravely, his voice unusually somber. "Standard scanning protocols for all Confederation vessels explicitly prohibit deep scans of human military craft. And yes, before you inquire, that regulation was written in blood, a substantial quantity of it, in fact." The commander's primary eyes narrowed as the holodisplay transitioned to depict a streamlined, angular vessel of unmistakably human design. "This is the U.S. Defiance. Primitive by our standards, barely faster than light. Armor that wouldn't withstand a Confederation mining laser. And yet..." He paused for dramatic effect, allowing his gaze to sweep across the now captivated audience. 3 hegemony battlecruisers attempted to scan it during the Orion border dispute. Do you know what transpired? No one responded. The tension in the room had reached uncomfortable levels, even for a species that communicated partially through pressure waves. The first ship's sensor array melted, not malfunctioned, melted. The second ship's quantum computers crashed so completely they required total replacement. And the third ship's entire crew experienced what human medical texts term intense auditory hallucinations for 9 cycles. Lieutenant Bohr's tentacle drooped noticeably. "But how?" "Our scanning technology is passive, it merely collects data." Vrah emitted another gurgling laugh, devoid of humor this time. "That's the terrifying aspect. No one knows how they accomplish it. The Confederation's foremost theorists have proposed 16 different hypotheses, and all of them are equally unsettling." The holodisplay shifted again, exhibiting footage of human representatives at the Galactic Confederation headquarters on Nexus Prime. They appear so innocuous, merely 2 eyes, fragile-looking bodies devoid of natural defenses. "Don't be deceived by appearances," Vrah cautioned, noting the dismissive expressions on some of the younger crew members. The Andraxians also considered humans harmless. Now, they have an entire religious sect dedicated to appeasing what they term the chaotic ones. He deactivated the holodisplay with a decisive gesture. "We're entering human-controlled space tomorrow for our routine border patrol. Standard protocols apply, and I cannot emphasize this sufficiently. If you detect human military vessels, you report their position and do not scan them, not even a routine identification ping. Is that understood?" The crew responded with a synchronized acknowledgement, but Vrah detected several skeptical expressions. He'd seen that look before on young officers, that perilous blend of curiosity and disbelief that was the undoing of so many promising careers. "Dismissed." He sighed, knowing that at least one of them would likely disregard his warning. They invariably did. First contact disaster, you want to know why we have these protocols? Admiral Jack Corvin's voice reverberated through the Academy lecture hall, silencing the murmurs of the graduating censor officers. Let me tell you about the Traxian incident, the event that no one in Confederation intelligence likes to discuss. The Admiral's scales rippled with agitation as he activated the secure historical archives. The room's lights dimmed automatically, and the security seals on the doors glowed red. This wasn't standard curriculum. 73 standard cycles ago, the Traxian exploratory fleet, the pride of our scientific community, detected unusual warp signatures near the then unexplored Sol system. Captain Morzeltak, decorated explorer and recipient of the Galactic Science Medal, made what appeared to be a perfectly reasonable decision. A holographic image appeared, depicting an elegant Traxian science vessel with its distinctive spiral sensor arrays. Adjacent to it, a crude, boxy human ship hung in the void like an afterthought of engineering. That, the Admiral pointed out with a gnarled claw, was humanity's third attempt at a faster-than-light vessel, the U.S. Pioneer. Barely functioning, employing a warp field so unstable our scientists still don't comprehend how it didn't disintegrate itself. When the Traxians encountered it, standard first contact protocols were initiated. The holo shifted to display technical readouts of scanning procedures. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. Captain Ziltek ordered a comprehensive bioscan and tech assessment, all standard procedure for potential new species. The scan lasted approximately 12 seconds, the Admiral paused, his breathing labored. 12 seconds, and then, well, see for yourself. The recording showed the Traxian ship lurching suddenly, as if struck. Emergency lights activated across its hull. Then, bizarrely, the ship began to spin, not in the controlled rotation used for artificial gravity, but a chaotic tumble that sent it careening through space. The official record states that the Traxian vessel experienced a catastrophic systems failure of unknown origin, Admiral Corvin continued. The unofficial record, their entire navigation system began calculating routes to non-existent coordinates. Their quantum processors started solving mathematical equations that cannot be solved. And their communication array broadcast the same message on all frequencies for 16 hours straight. The text appeared on screen, and the Admiral read it aloud with evident discomfort. Stop looking at us. We see you looking. We see you, Gale. Several of the students shifted uneasily in their seats. When rescue vessels finally reached them, half the crew was catatonic. The other half had locked themselves in the emergency pods. Nav, the ship's AI, a Class 9 intelligence with 42 redundant safety protocols, had somehow developed what the trauma specialists called acute paranoid schizophrenia. The Admiral deactivated the hologram with a sharp gesture. And what did the humans say when we finally established diplomatic relations and inquired about the incident? They laughed. Their ambassador, Parker, I believe her name was, just shrugged and said, "Oh, you guys tried to scan the Pioneer? Yeah, we don't recommend that." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow carried throughout the hall. We later learned that humans had installed what they casually referred to as countermeasures on their ships, not weapons, they insisted, just protective systems. When pressed about the details, they simply said, it was probably best if we didn't know. The Admiral's expression soured further. 17 different Confederation species contributed their best scientists to analyze the incident. The leading theory, the humans had somehow weaponized information itself. The lights in the lecture hall gradually brightened as the Admiral straightened his uniform. 26 similar incidents occurred before the Confederation finally established Protocol 781/3, no direct scanning of human military or exploration vessels under any circumstances. We communicate with them the old-fashioned way, by asking permission first. A student near the front raised a limb tentatively. But Admiral, surely our scanning technology has advanced since then. The Traxian incident was over 70 cycles ago. Admiral Corvin's laugh was hollow and brittle. The Lockthar tried an improved scan on a human mining vessel just 6 cycles ago. Their entire sensor crew developed synchronized nightmares for a month. The nightmares reportedly featured something humans call clowns. The Admiral gathered his materials and headed for the exit. Remember your training, respect Protocol 781/3, and if you absolutely must interact with human ships, just send a message. Trust me, it's safer for everyone involved. Galactic Protocol Development. The 43rd Emergency Session of the Galactic Confederation Security Council is hereby called to order, announced High Arbiter Zoltan, striking the crystalline floor 3 times with his ceremonial staff. The sound reverberated throughout the massive chamber of deliberation on Nexus Prime, where representatives from over 200 species had gathered with unprecedented urgency. For the 43rd time, muttered Subcounselor Mara Vextel to her aide, rolling all 5 of her eyes simultaneously. We've gathered to discuss the human problem, and for the 43rd time, we'll probably just add another subsection to Protocol 781/3. Haid, fresh from the diplomatic corps, looked scandalized. But Counselor, the Haglorian research vessel was completely reprogrammed. It started playing something called Never Gonna Give You Up on repeat through all communication channels. The Counselor waved a dismissive tentacle. Yes, the humans call it rickrolling. It's apparently some form of psychological warfare disguised as humor. The Planet Potentiary Committee on Human Cultural Expressions has an entire subcommittee dedicated to it. At the center of the chamber, the security director for the Outer Rim, General Krav Dunmore, was presenting holographic evidence of the latest incident. As you can see, the general explained, his military exoskeleton clicking with agitation, the science vessel empirical logic performed what they thought was a passive, undetectable scan of the human military transport Bodhisattva. Within moments, their entire navigation system rerouted the ship to something called Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, a fictional location from human entertainment media. Scattered, nervous laughter rippled through the chamber. This is not amusing, the general snapped. The Haglorians had to eject their entire computer core. And when confronted, the human captain just said, and I quote, "Oops, my bad. Those defenses must have been feeling extra spicy today." High Arbiter Zoltan's facial ridges furrowed deeply. This marks the 27th incident this cycle alone. Clearly, our current protocols are insufficient. We could just ask them to stop, suggested Ambassador Lorne of the Fur Ion Collective, a species known for their disarmingly direct approach to diplomacy. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the security director's exoskeleton nearly cracking from tension. Ask them to stop, he repeated, his voice modulator fluctuating wildly. Ambassador, we have asked. Their official response was, again, I quote, "Our defensive systems have minds of their own. Sometimes we'd turn them off if we could, but they're kind of temperamental." From the back of the chamber, the electronic sentience representative, a hovering cube of quantum processors that represented the Confederation's AI population, projected its thoughts directly into the translation grid. Analysis suggests humans are engaging in deliberate misdirection. Probability of their defensive systems being temperamental calculated at 0.0000000034%. Alternative hypothesis: humans enjoy watching us panic. Regardless of their motivations, interrupted Chief Science Administrator Kinelrath, we must update our protocols. I propose we establish designated communication zones at least 3 light minutes from any human vessel. All interactions must be preceded by formal permission requests, and no scanning of any kind without written authorization from both Human Command and Confederation Central. The bureaucratic machinery of the Galactic Confederation lurched into motion. Committees formed, subcommittees commissioned study groups created task forces. By the end of the 16-hour session, Protocol 781/3 had grown from a modest 40-page document to a bloated 300-page manual titled Comprehensive Guidelines for Non-Invasive Interaction with Human Vessels, a Cautionary Approach. As the session finally adjourned, Subcounselor Vextel found herself cornered by the human representative, a disarmingly cheerful woman named Ambassador Rebecca Chen. Quite the productive meeting, Ambassador Chen remarked with a smile that Vextel found inexplicably unnerving. Though I think you folks are making this way more complicated than it needs to be. Perhaps if your species would simply explain how your defensive measures work. Oh, we can't do that, Chen interrupted, still smiling. Most of it runs on what we call chaotic algorithms. Even our engineers don't fully understand them. You deploy systems you don't understand? Vextel's vocal sac inflated with alarm. Ambassador Chin shrugged casually. Sometimes the best defense is one that even you can't predict. Makes it hard for enemies to plan countermeasures, you know? As the human walked away, Vextel turned to her aide, all 5 eyes wide open. Add another 50 pages to the protocol, she whispered urgently, and mark it in red, under no circumstances attempt to understand human defensive logic. The aide nodded frantically, adding, and perhaps we should include a section on not asking too many questions. Excellent idea, Vextel agreed. The less we know, the safer we all are. Captain Nixtral Verani had never been one to abide by rules that seemed illogical. It was this very trait that had simultaneously earned him the most rapid promotion in Zixtran Scout Fleet history and the highest number of official reprimands, 27 at last count. Absolutely ludicrous, he muttered, scrolling through the latest revision of Protocol 781/3 on his personal datapad. His third eye twitched with irritation as he flipped past page after page of bureaucratic drivel. 300 pages to say don't scam the humans. I could have summarized it in 3 words. First Officer Mara Zanl cast a concerned glance in his direction, her sensory frills flattening against her neck, a Zoran expression of worry. Captain, perhaps you shouldn't be so vocal about your opinions of Confederation protocols, particularly not on the bridge. Nix waved a dismissive appendage. Oh, please, Mara, we're 3 cycles into a routine patrol of the buffer zone, and the nearest vessel is the supply freighter at Outpost 19. Who's going to report me, the bulkheads? The bridge crew of the scout vessel Relentless Inquiry studiously focused on their stations, pretending not to hear the captain's borderline insubordination. They had all grown accustomed to Nix's irreverent attitude toward authority. It was practically a prerequisite for serving under him. I'm just saying, Nix continued, warming to his topic, that I've read actual scientific papers on human defense systems. The Confederation is overreacting. Most of those incidents occurred with outdated scanning technology. Mara's frills fluttered with alarm. Scientific papers? Those are restricted under Section 47B of the... Yes, I know, restricted under the Knowledge Containment Act. Nix rolled all 3 of his eyes simultaneously. But think about it logically, the humans have been part of galactic society for over 50 cycles now. Their technology is primitive by our standards. Are we really supposed to believe they've developed some mystical defense system that can drive sensor operators insane? The navigation officer, Lieutenant Krex Bellarai, cleared his throat nervously. Actually, Captain, my clutch sibling works in Confederation intelligence. They say the humans don't even deny it, they just won't explain how it works. Nix swiveled his command chair toward the lieutenant. And that doesn't strike you as suspicious? Maybe it's just an elaborate bluff. Create a few incidents, spread some scary rumors, and suddenly nobody dares to scan your ships, even though your technology is vastly inferior. A tense silence descended over the bridge. What the captain was suggesting bordered on treason, and questioning official Confederation security assessments was a serious offense. Captain, Mara said carefully, our patrol route takes us within half a light year of the Jupiter outpost. That's human military space. I'm aware, Nix replied, his outer membrane changing color slightly, the Zoran equivalent of a mischievous smile. In fact, I've been meaning to discuss a slight course adjustment with you. Mara's frills went completely flat. Captain, no. Hear me out, Nix insisted, lowering his voice and gesturing for his first officer to join him at the tactical display. Look at these readings we picked up near the Kuiper Belt last cycle, unusual energy signatures, completely unidentified, and conveniently close to human patrol routes. Mara observed dryly, exactly. It's our duty to investigate. Our duty is to follow our assigned patrol route and adhere to all protocols regarding human space, Mara countered, all 3 of her hearts clearly racing based on the rapid fluctuations in her neck membrane. Nix leaned in closer. When did Storians become so cautious? Our species mapped the void reaches when others were afraid to leave their home systems. We charted the quantum rifts of Sector 9, and now we're afraid of primitive apes with barely functional warp drives? We're not afraid, Mara hissed, keeping her voice low. We're prudent. There's a difference. The captain straightened up, his decision clearly already made.
Lieutenant Belnari, plot a course to intercept these energy readings.
Standard observation protocols. Captain, Mara protested, no longer bothering to hide her concern from the crew. That will take us within communication range of the human military outpost.
Well then, Nix replied cheerfully, we'll just have to be discreet, won't we? Passive sensors only. They'll never know we're there.
As the relentless inquiry altered course, the tension on the bridge was thick enough to register on atmospheric sensors. Junior officers exchanged worried glances, while the more experienced crew members focused intently on their duties, clearly having served with Captain Nix long enough to know what was coming. 6 hours later, the scout ship dropped out of warp on the edge of the Jupiter defense perimeter. Immediately the sensor array detected a human vessel running dark its engines in low power mode and identified human ship at bearing 227 Mark 43, reported sensor officer Tria Rex, her voice tight with anxiety. Configuration unknown, not matching any registered transponder codes. Nix leaned forward in his command chair, all three eyes focused intently on the main viewer.
Interesting.
A ship without identification lurking on the edge of their own territory.
Most peculiar.
Captain, Mara warned, Protocol 781/3 explicitly forbids. I know what the protocol says, Nix interrupted, waving away her concern.
But clearly, this is an exceptional circumstance.
That could be a smuggler, a pirate, or something worse.
It would be irresponsible not to gather more information.
He turned to the sensor officer, his expression set with determination.
Passive scans only, Officer Rex.
Nothing that could be detected.
I just want to know what we're dealing with.
The young officer's hands hesitated over her console. Sir, with respect, even passive scans of human vessels are.
Are you refusing a direct order, officer?
Nix asked quietly. The bridge fell silent. Only the soft hum of the ship's systems could be heard as every crew member watched the confrontation unfold. No, sir, Tria finally replied, her fingers moving reluctantly across the controls.
Initiating passive scan. May the Void Mother protect us all.
Nix settled back in his chair with satisfaction.
Sometimes you have to challenge superstition with science.
Crew, today we might just demystify one of the Confederation's most persistent myths. Mara's expression suggested she had several choice words for her captain, none of them suitable for bridge protocol. Instead, she simply took her position at the auxiliary tactical station, ready to respond to whatever came next. Passive scan commencing. Officer Jorrex announced data incoming in 321. The scan attempt. Passive scan initializing. Officer Jorrex announced, her voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking any louder might alert the human vessel to their presence. Her six-fingered hands danced nervously across the sensor console, engaging only the most subtle detection systems: quantum field analyzers, background radiation assessors, and gravitational wave detectors. Captain Nix leaned forward in his command chair, all three eyes focused intensely on the main view screen. The human ship hung against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling clouds, a dark silhouette that revealed frustratingly little about its purpose or capabilities. Preliminary data suggests it's a mid-sized vessel. Jorrex reported approximately 230 m in length. Power signature is unusual. Unusual how? Nix prompted, his membrane changing to a shade of intrigued purple. Jorrex frowned at her readings. It's running at minimal output, but there are fluctuations, patterns I haven't seen before. Her frills twitched with professional curiosity, momentarily overriding her fear. The energy signature doesn't match any known human propulsion system. First Officer Mara cleared her throat pointedly. Captain, we've confirmed it's an unidentified human vessel. Protocol dictates we report the position and withdraw immediately. Not yet, Nix countered, his voice taking on an edge of excitement. This could be exactly what I've been looking for, evidence that humans are deploying technology beyond their development level, perhaps acquired from another species. Lieutenant Belnarai shifted uncomfortably at the navigation console. Sir, if we're suggesting humans have acquired restricted technology, that's even more reason to alert Confederation security and leave. Wouldn't let some bureaucrat take credit for my discovery, Nix scoffed. Besides, we need more data to support such a claim. He turned back to the sensor officer. Jorrex, increase scan resolution. Let's see if we can determine what kind of vessel we're dealing with. The young officer's frills flattened completely against her neck. Captain, that would require an active scan. Even a low power one would be detectable. The humans are 500,000 kilometers away with their systems in low power mode. Nix argued a precisely calibrated narrow beam scan might slip past their sensors or trigger whatever defensive systems they have. Mira countered sharply. Nix swiveled his chair to face his first officer directly. Mira, in all your years of service, have you ever personally witnessed these supposedly terrifying human countermeasures, or are you just repeating stories told by jumpy sensor officers who probably miscalibrated their equipment before?
Before Mira could respond, Nix turned back to Jor Rex limited active scan, narrowest possible beam, 9-second burst only. The bridge fell silent. Even the ship's environmental systems seemed to quiet down as the crew collectively held their breath.
Scan initiating. Jor Rex finally said, her voice trembling slightly as she pressed the sequence of commands. For a moment nothing happened. The human vessel continued to drift silently, showing no reaction to the probing energy reaching out from the relentless inquiry.
See, Nix said triumphantly, nothing to worry.
A high-pitched tone suddenly emanated from the sensor console, cutting him off mid-sentence. Jor Rex jerked back from her station as if burned, her frills extending to their full alarmed position.
What was that? Mira demanded, already moving toward the sensor station.
I don't know, Jor Rex replied, panic evident in her voice. The scan was proceeding normally and then something responded.
Responded? Nix repeated, his membrane paling to a concerned gray. What do you mean responded?
The tone sounded again, louder this time, then again and again. A pattern began to emerge: 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. It's sending something back along our scan beam, Jor Rex whispered, staring at her console in horror. Something is writing our own scan back to us. The ship's lights flickered on the main view screen. The image of the human vessel seemed to waver as if seen through heat distortion.
Emanate the scan now, Mira ordered, but Jor Rex was already frantically working her console. I'm trying, the system isn't responding.
The main computer's voice suddenly activated, speaking in a tone none of the crew had ever heard before. New parameters accepted. Initiating security protocol Alpha 9 Tango Foxtrot Unicorn. What security protocol? Nix demanded, genuine fear coloring his voice. For the first time, we don't have anything with that designation. The view screen abruptly changed to display an image that made no sense to anyone on the bridge. A human male with peculiar facial hair wearing primitive clothing. Music began blaring through the ship's communication system, a jaunty repetitive tune with incomprehensible lyrics about never giving up and never letting down. Shut it off, Nix shouted over the noise, but the computer continued to increase the volume. Secondary systems began to fail across the ship. The gravity plating fluctuated wildly, sending several crew members floating briefly toward the ceiling before slamming them back to the deck. Emergency lighting activated, then deactivated, then began to pulse in rhythm with the bizarre music. The computer core is being rewritten, shouted the engineering officer from her station. Some kind of viral code is spreading through all systems. On the auxiliary screens around the bridge, thousands of human faces began to appear, all making the same exaggerated expression with their mouths open and what appeared to be frozen laughter. Below each face was the same incomprehensible text: "You mad, bro?" The new alert blared over the increasingly chaotic bridge. Lieutenant Bellerai looked up from his console, his face a mask of pure terror. Captain, the human vessel is powering up. They're changing course, heading straight for us. Nix stared at the view screen in disbelief as the previously dormant ship suddenly blazed with light, engines flaring to life with alarming power as it turned toward the relentless inquiry. A message scrolled across their communication display in perfect and script: scan detected, preparing complimentary demonstration of human hospitality protocols. Please remain still for your convenience. Get us out of here, Nix screamed. All pretense of scientific curiosity evaporated. Maximum warp any direction as the crew scrambled to comply. The computer spoke again, now somehow using Captain Nix's own voice. Plot twist: Captain, you're not going anywhere. The escape revelation manual override. First Officer Mara shouted, dropping beneath her console and physically yanking out the neural interface cables. Everyone disconnect your stations from the main computer. The bridge crew scrambled to comply, ripping out connections as the ship's systems continued their descent into madness. The relentless musical assault about never giving up played at an almost painful volume. Engineering reports they've isolated the backup propulsion system, Lieutenant Bellerai exclaimed, using an antiquated emergency terminal, disconnected from the primary computer. We can initiate emergency warp if we circumvent the safety protocols. Captain Nix, his membrane now a ghastly shade of petrified gray-green, nodded vigorously. Do it now, he urged, as the crew frantically struggled to regain command of their vessel. The view screen showed the human spacecraft growing larger, its approach unhurried, yet somehow more menacing because